Well, all right. So thank you everyone for joining us and welcome to this Azure Container Apps, the game changer platform that we have from Microsoft Azure, which was recently launched and it's on a preview now. Uh, so I'm here, Feroz, a quite long name, Abdul Rasheed Feroz Khan. So welcome to this one-hour talk, which is going to be on Azure Container Apps. And I'm joining you today from Dear Azure, and we have one of our other rock stars, Will Chin, who is a Microsoft MVP with us, helping us a lot with hosting this event and being a speaker as well. I'd like to have a quick introduction from Chin as well. Chin, all to you.
Hey Feroz, thanks a lot. Thanks, fantastic, and hi everyone. So it's really fantastic to be with Dear Azure to discuss few things about the Azure Container Apps. And I know that Feroz is going to rock now with the beautiful serverless content. Thanks a lot, guys. So let's hear from Feroz now, and let's enjoy the show. And later, if you have some interesting questions, we will try to see how we can address it. Thanks a lot, Feroz. Over to you now.
All right. Thanks, Chin. Yeah. Well, once again, so thanks to Azure, and then now super excited to share how Microsoft is empowering us to innovate with a serverless environment, the containerization that we have on Azure. Let's start here with a quick introduction, right? How Microsoft has been helping us with the app of the future that we have in the cloud native. The future is all defined by the accelerated innovation that we have, and much of this innovation is like digital and it takes the form of new applications and the apps of the future that are said to be in cloud native. So these apps are designed to take full advantage of the latest innovation that we have in, I would say, like a public cloud with an intelligent way, and it's infused with AI as well to provide the advanced insights. And quickly, it also helps us to incorporate some open source technologies and libraries from across the globe. So we have like a 90 percentage, I would say, right, as of now, which we have with Microsoft, which is based on open source. So there are like thousands of customers in every industry who have started building and running their modern cloud native applications, especially on Azure today. And here's like we have the customers, right? We are trusted by thousands of customers who is using like cloud native design patterns, achieving with the agile, reliability, scalability, and security that's demanded by the next generation of apps as well. Let's talk about a example, right? You should have seen that we have like even in the database platform we have the open source integrated, and the days that we have been working with the virtual machines have been finger crossed now, and we have moved to the environment of containerization. And Microsoft has started extending the platform, right? I would say we have GCP is one of our pioneer, and we do have like Microsoft who has been extending hands working with the serverless environment. And just recently, we have come up with the container apps environment, which is on a serverless stream. So we see the innovation of every industry who have been stepping on towards the containerization platform and much working with the open source as well. So open source software is an integral part of development at Microsoft now. It has been aligned with the goal to empower all developers to be successful on building any application using any language on any platform as well. And Microsoft is then committed to building the open, flexible technology and working with the open source community as well to grow together as an industry. We have like you see we have the Microsoft contributions spanning multiple areas from the operating system to the programming languages and from data and AI to web as well. Microsoft is also now focusing on the cloud native development. It had been ages like they have been focusing on the cloud native development and making some help on writing the microservices and using K8s easier with projects like Dapper or Helm and with K8s as well. So Microsoft is now like I would say I would highly recommend as an active collaborator with the open source community, and we have the Microsoft product team who have been a dedicated team as well with the open source community working on the containerization platforms as well now. So here is all like a glimpse to understand about how the Microsoft contribution has been extending with the open source environments. We see Microsoft is constantly providing capabilities that can help meeting your needs to work with the open source. And with the increase in open source adoption, it's like imperative that it runs smoothly on the Azure cloud environment. See, Azure is like you can run multiple apps and increase the workload performance and security as well, which also helps us with optimizing the IT cost, right? And cloud native has now recently, I would say, right from the Ignite that we had, right, the latest Ignite that we had, the serverless with cloud native has become a hot topic that Microsoft have been discussing with all the partners that we have. The open source is like all way on Azure, where Microsoft started working with Azure Container Instance. We had ACR on which we can store the images, right? The container registry. And we do came up with AKS, right? The Kubernetes service and the support with the app service plans that we had with Docker. And now Microsoft has their super exclusive platform where they say like you go with container apps and managing your K8s API and everything is going to be in the hands of Microsoft then. So you get a flexible platform where you're going to host like multiple container apps, and it's going to be like a distributed platform that you have. You can integrate the different runtime stacks of APIs over the container platform as well. The technologies like Kubernetes, containers, serverless functions, APIs, and DevOps are all like how developers come to get the new agility, again, the reliability and the security challenges as well. And Microsoft has started working on it, right? Microsoft gives you a wide kind of integrations. You speak, it can be deeply integrated with both like GitHub and with Visual Studio Code as well. So App Service makes building and managing web applications and API easy with a fully managed platform. And it also provides you with the features like auto scaling, right? We do have like staging, the deployment slots, and integrating with the web authentications. And we do have the serverless with Azure functions, right? The Azure function makes creating like event-driven programming simple with the state of art with auto scaling. And we do get like triggers and bindings across the Azure services. We have been extending hands with ML as well, right? And we do have the Rockstar like Azure Arc, which helps us to go with, develop with your own platform of knowledge that you have. So it helps on optimizing for the developer productivity too. So let me kick on. See, here we go with innovating with the cloud native apps. We have been with hybrid cloud native apps, and we do have like K8s on Azure, and we do have this serverless container apps. And I mean, today we are in a topic discussing about the serverless container apps. And just before getting on to that, I would like to also pitch maybe probably like some 5 minutes of time where I can spend on this hybrid cloud native apps and K8s that we have in Azure. And we could also take like a comparison, right? Taking up ACI on one side, and we have AKS as well, and we can also extend the hands towards the container apps, giving a comparison on the same. You see here the hybrid cloud native apps. The hybrid cloud native. Let's understand like what's going to be the cloud native, right? You have like the package application code and the dependencies in containers. You deploy them as a microservice. And then we manage them using the DevOps process and the tools that we have. So this helps like extending, you have microservice, you host it to its container, you use DevOps. They can also go with Azure functions and the APIs integration over here. So we have the Azure application services where Azure app services where functions helps us, and we do have event grid, API management, and logic as well that can help us with this environment with cloud native. And at top of this, we do have the K8s on Azure, so the Kubernetes environment on Azure. So Kubernetes on Azure is where Microsoft has their enterprise grade by design. It gives you a cluster management, And you go up with your code, right? You go with the pods to be created, and you take a complete control with the Kubernetes API. You can manage your Kubernetes API, right? And you keep your images. It can be from ACR. You can call the images here, and we do have services like Security Center, Azure Monitor, and for authentication, we have Azure Advisors, Azure Active Directory, and the recommendations are taken care by Azure Advisor as well. The image here plays a major role, right? You call the image from the ACR, and for again, like the security factors, all we have the key vault, which plays again taking care of the security patterns here. So AKS is like enterprise grade by design. We have AKS applications which can be running on Azure Stack. We can develop an AKS, but deploying can be unmodified to the edge. And we can also modernize the Windows and Linux apps. You can say like we have .NET framework and core apps being containerized here. And on top of this, we can even use like data services on Azure Stack. So you can run Azure Arc for data services on a resilient platform. And finally, we come up with this serverless container apps. So this is the hot trend that we have now. The cloud native application. So we have like microservices, we have K8s on Azure, serverless, right? We do have DevOps and operations which gets involved, and multi-layered security that gets added up here. So the point here in the Azure Container Apps is that, hey, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can we be on mute, please? Yeah, cool. Thank you. So the Azure Container Apps is where it enables you to run the microservices and the containerized applications on a serverless platform. So it includes, like you can say, you're going to deploy your API, right? The API endpoints, and you can host your, like, let's say the background process that it's going to be carried out with the cloud applications. It can also handle some event-driven processing, right? Let's say the processing that has to be handled by event grid, and we can then run the microservices as well. And the point here is that it can dynamically scale, right? The container apps has come all the way where it takes care of your CPU or the memory load. It can dynamically scale, and it also helps with the microservice. So you can have like multiple microservices. You deploy and manage a microservice architecture with the options to integrate with distributed, let's say the distributed application runtime that we have. And at top of this, we also have like, you see, we have the container apps where the teams might feel that in order to get the benefits of cloud native, we just have like only choice, which is that to be Kubernetes directly. I mean, until now, we have that kind of environment where the developers feel that it's just like Kubernetes where we get connected with it directly. But Kubernetes is a layer on top of infrastructure with its own set of APIs and concepts that a developer will need to understand to get their code running, right? And this can all like add complexity, cost, and it can impact the speed in which a team can get their service running reliably and securely in the cloud. So to overcome this, Microsoft recently came up with the service calling, the Azure Container Apps that we have. The Container Apps provides the same microservice benefits like what we have in the Kubernetes, but it's gonna in a fully managed and in a serverless platform. So managing the Kubernetes cluster, managing the API, right? These things are gonna be handled by Microsoft. It provides a path for teams, the developer teams, to build a microservice without having to overcome the concept of operations, which overheads the targeting Kubernetes directly. We can also build the containers based on microservice, and you can just have it with all your app and your code as well. The container app is the only serverless container solution, I would say, offering a combination of both the built-in HTTP-based autoscaling, including like scale to zero and event-driven based autoscaling to run the containers that may be processing the messages from queues, streams, or let's say even with the databases. And I also see like the container apps supporting microservice architecture But with containers, you use like any language again, right? Any language, or it can be like any framework or runtime that we come across. So this is all like the possibilities that we have in the container apps. And at top of these things, we also come up like I see that container apps is now supporting with I mean the load balancers that we have. They use the API gateway and they support with load balancers on distributing the loads as well. So this is all like the flexibility, right? This is all like the flexibility that I see where comparing towards like the other containerization environment that Microsoft has been providing us. And Container Apps is said to be a super exclusive platform where it helps the developers, right? It helps the developers to focus completely on the development with the microservices, with any language or framework, or the runtime stack, right? That they are gonna fix to us. See, here is the much that we have in Azure Container Apps. It provides a native access to powerful open source projects and frameworks. So the developers can write the code, as I said, in their favorite language, and it can accelerate the development through the built-in integrations with a Dapper to simplify the common tasks like service discovery, publish, and subscribe models, or managing the state, and much more. We are also going to focus on the apps, right? We are going to focus completely on the development and not on the infrastructure. And we get the support of seamlessly upgrading to the K8s as well here. So I would just summarize saying this container apps is built on the foundation of powerful open source technology. And behind the scenes, every container apps is running securely on the AKS with open source technology, like let's say again with it can be Dapper or Kida, something like that. So this lets you perform modern application lifecycle tasks like application upgrades, traffic shifting, versioning, right? And all ready to run from your developer team to the production environment to push the code as such. So that's something what we have as Azure Container Apps today. I recently was surfing across by evening today, right, with one of my mates where we were seeing like even the Azure Container Apps allows us with a free trial, right? We get, I mean, there's nothing like a billing that gets involved for a particular cost of the metrics that we have. So you can refer it. You go with azure.microsoft.com and you can find it on the Azure Container Apps where there is a costing metrics which has been added as well. And here is the comparison that we have with Azure Container Hosting Options. So Azure Container Hosting Options, I see these three or major services that we have been using so far, right? We have the AKS, and we do have ACI and the Azure Container Apps over here. So Azure Container Apps is said to be the one which we have been discussing. It see all these three platforms are going to help us with hosting the microservice, the code that you're going to develop, right? But the flexibility that we have in the container apps is that you are not going to manage the Kubernetes API, right? So it gives you with a service discovery and it does the traffic splitting as well. And you're going to focus completely on the developer track, right? You will come up with your microservice to be developed and the cluster management, the native Kubernetes API management, all these things are going to be managed by Microsoft. So your track is going to be completely on the development that we have. You can do the scaling based on the traffic, and you don't get, as I said, like you don't get like the control over the cluster management that we have across. So the control plane, I repeat, the control plane is going to be managed by Microsoft. So the best example, if you're based out of India, right, you should have seen this. We have Ola here. You just stick onto Ola and you take a ride, right? You're not gonna own the car, or you cannot do any kind of customizations on your car, right? You just carry your platform to be hosted across with the microservice container applications that you have developed, and it can go with HTTP or HTTPS to be hosted on. AKS is going to be like you host your container with many microservices again, right? You can put up all the microservice containers here, but you get the control. You get the control on the cluster management as well. That's said to be AKS. AKS is said to be like I would say more like an infrastructure, right? You're going to manage. It supports directly with the access to the Kubernetes API, and you can run any Kubernetes workload as well over here. And finally, the ACI that we have, the Azure Container Instance, you get a pod. You get a single pod with Hyper-V isolated with the containers on demand. And again, we are going to come up with, you see, like the platform is provided, the instance is provided for you. And you're going to host your microservice applications within the container instance. So the possibility here is that if you need a less obstinate building block, right, where you want to take up the control with the layer orchestration and scaling on top of an ACI to the virtual nodes, then you can go for this ACI. So ACI is like a Zoom card. The instance is going to be provided for you. And from there on, you're going to work on like driving the car, right? So you're going to build the microservice and you're going to manage the instance as well. So with this, I would like to go on with a quick demo, right? Seeing how the container apps is gonna work. So let's take an architecture. We will see how we can deploy a Dapper application to the Azure Container Apps, where the microservice can be from the container app can be of different platforms that we have. So this architecture that you see, we are going to come up with a distributed environment that we have here, and we are going to come up with the microservice where this distributed application runtime, one is set to be with Python, right? The producer, the client, and the consumer. Oops, I'm sorry. So the producer is going to be with a Python, and the consumer is going to come up with Node that we have. So we will make sense about how we can create a container app environment for your container apps. And we do have like a blob storage. You see here, we have the blob storage, which can store the state of the container apps. We will try deploying two apps. One is set to be the producer one, and the other one is set to be the consumer one that we have. So it's on like different runtime stack, and we will verify the interaction that happens between these two container services, the microservice that we have. Let me get on to the demo. So I will stick on to the Azure portal now. Here we go with the Azure portal. So let's begin. I will probably go with a Cloud Shell for this. Shell.azure.com. We'll try moving on with the resource groups. Well, so let's declare the variable, right? Let's say go with a resource group, which can be, let's make it as my container apps. And we shall also go with the location, which can be East US. And I will say the container to go with creating a variable again with container apps environment. And at top of this, let's create a log analytics workspace as well. So log analytics container apps. And I will also declare a storage container name here. So storage account, right? Let's say container, which can be named as my container. And now let's go with giving a variable for storage account too. Dear Azure, let's say 2021. I hope it should be there. Well, now let's see, we have an extension. So let me use a notepad, right? You need to come up with this particular extension that you have, the worker apps, right? We have the CLI extension for the blob to be enabled to work on this Azure Container Apps. So this is on preview that we have now. So in case if you haven't added before, right, we can keep this to be added as well. And you can also go with, you need to make sense, you're going to host this as a web application, so you have to see that Microsoft.web, the resource provider that we have, right? It has to be registered as well. And now let me see, we can create a resource group for this. So AZ group create the name, resource group, the variable that we declared before, and the location as well. So that creates a resource group for us. And we can also create a log analytics workspace. So AZ monitor log analytics workspace. The resource group again. So the variable resource group and the workspace name. The variable log analytics. So here it creates a log analytics workspace for us. And once when this gets created, now we will be trying to retrieve the client ID and the client secret as well for the same. We're going to come up with a config file. We will be having a config file on which we need to keep your the components, right? You will be using the properties that we are going to call from here. So a YAML file again, which helps us in enabling the Dapper app to access your state store. So to do that, you need the client ID and you need to know about client secret as well for this workspace. So give this CLI command. You see the log analytics workspace. We are calling the client ID for the one which we created now. And we can say, let's split up here. Right. So now let's go. We will try deploying the container app. So you're going to come up with like individual container apps that can be deployed to the Azure Container Apps environment. So we have the client ID, which we have declared with a variable, and we have like the client secret as well that we have declared. And apart from that, you do have the resource group, and you also have the container apps environment declared with a variable along with the data center location. So this command that you see on the screen, right? The AZ container app, you're going to create a container app environment, calling up the name from the variable, the resource group, the workspace ID, the key, and the data center location too. You see here the container app environment is in preview now. Let's wait for this. And once when this gets created, you need to set up a state store. So we will be creating a storage account. And I'm going to have my config file on the Cloud Shell. So we will create a storage account. We will call the key. And from there on, we will try deploying the service application. Well, so we have the container app which has been created now. You see here the AZ container app. You have a JSON representation that says that you have your container app to be up. And now let's go with creating an Azure storage account. So I'm gonna like create a storage account. You see this command AZ storage account create, right? We give up the name with a variable, calling up the resource group, the data center location too. And it's going to be like a standard read access geo and storage with a V2 kind of thing. So this storage account creates with all your account name, container name, which we have declared in the variable. So the Dapper creates a container with this name if it does not already exist in your Azure storage account. So the container name is set to be my container, and the storage account name is set to be Dear Azure 2021. Well, and at top of this, we can try retrieving the storage account key. You go up here, you say storage account key to be called, and you can then say to the storage right account. So here is the key. Let's try copying it. And I will try going up with the notepad. Let's keep this here. So now I was saying that we will be coming up with a config file, right? We will be having the config file named as components. So I was executing this before for another task. So you see here, I have the components.yaml, which I've uploaded on my Cloud Shell drive. And here I'm just going to keep these changes to be added up. The value, it's going to be the storage account name, Dear Azure 2021, right? It's going to be the components that we are adding up for the storage account. And you do have the account key. So let's keep this account key to be updated from the one which we copied before. Let me copy it here. And we should go with the value to be added. And the name is set to be my container for the container. Okay, just makes sense that it's on schema. So we are using a supported schema here. The container app, as of now, it's not supporting the native Dapper component schema that we have. Maybe in later we can expect that. We can keep this to be saved, and we will try deploying them. So let's close this, and I will come up to the Cloud Shell, and I will try running the command. So again, makes sense for the command here. See here, we are going to create a container app with a name that's set to be node app with a resource group, calling up the container app environment, which we created before. And here is the image that we have. Okay. And the target port, keeping up the ports to be opened and ingress, the replica that you need to maintain across, and we keep the node to be added as well. So this deploys the service, which is set to be node app server on the target port with 3000, along with its the configured app ID for the node app, and with the ports that we have as well. So it does a service discovery and invocation too. Let's try running this. Go up here with the components. And finally, we can try like deploying the client application as well. So this is set to be the HTTP web server that we have. And we can also try like deploying a client application, which will be a headless client. Well, there we go. You see the JSON here, which says about the container app which has been hosted across. You find the fully qualified domain name over here, right? And you can also find the status too. We can also try like deploying the client application, as I said before. So this command is going to be with the Python app. Give me a minute. No, it's a node. Give me a moment. Let me go. I will say we need to come up with the Python app to be added up. So this command deploys the Python app that also runs with the Dapper, right? That's used to look up and securely call the Dapper for a node app then. Right. have the container app which gets deployed. And once when this gets deployed, now you can find the state persistence for this, just going up with the Azure portal. Oh, we have it here. You can go to your storage account. So if you could go to the resource groups, you can find the container apps environment and the containers that we have hosted as well. See the resource group, my container apps. And do you find this? You can see that we have the container apps, said to be Node and the Python that we have. And the environment, the log analytics workspace too. We do have the storage account on which you can find the state persistence. So go for containers, you can find my container. And there you find this order. So simply you can try like when you refresh the no, you can find the state ID that gets changed here. Let me go for edit. Yeah, so now the order ID is 58. You try refreshing this, you can find it keeps changing. So the data automatically gets updated. You can also find the logs for the same, right? You can view the logs of the container app which has been hosted from the log analytics workspace. So you see here we have the logs. Either you can go, you can find it over this UI environment, or we have been with open source. So you go with the CLI and try running this command. So we call the log analytics workspace and we pass a query to find the consoles that we have here. But the container name is Node app. So here you should be able to find the type of response. Can you see this? The Node app that we have, the order ID that it gets passed across. So this is simply how we can go with the container apps to be hosted. So this is with respect to the distributed application runtime that we have. So you can invoke, you can store, you can go with the pub and sub model, which can be with different runtime environments as well. So the APIs on which we can build the portable and reliable microservices using the Azure Container App. Well, so that's for me on discussing about the Azure Container Apps. And you can try out the Azure Container Apps today. You can go with aka.ms, right? We have this Container Apps documentation where Microsoft has shared few glimpses on it. And they have also given the comparison with other like function apps all. And we do have like a few architectural discussions that Microsoft is now. I just saw that we have the reference architecture that Microsoft is working on. And we have few documentations that are available with Ignite. I mean, the video tutorials that are available with Ignite as well, which was released by last month. You can also refer for the same. So build your apps in Azure and join us for more exciting talks. And let's make it interesting. Let's have a conversation. You can keep us posted. We do have Chen here who can help you out if you have any questions or if you want to make some understanding on the containerization environment on Azure. Any questions for it? Chen, you can join me.
Hey, Feroz. Fantastic session. I really liked it. It's really good introduction. The presentation is super awesome. I've just given a few comments on the corrections. I think you would have seen it, or probably attendees would have seen that.
Yes.
It's about the. Yeah. Go ahead, friends.
Yeah. Well, hi, Venkat. Can we get the recorded session? Yes, you can follow up either the Twitter handle that we have with the Dear Azure, right? So you can find the post from him on which the recording can be there on the YouTube, or you can even find like go to the YouTube channel that Dear Azure has. And I mean, you can find the video to be up. Probably it would take some 24 hours of time on which it can be uploaded there. Okay, there's another question. Can you please explain the difference between the function app and the container app? Okay, sure. See, function app is that it's again a serverless environment, of course, and it's going to be like the function. It's optimized for running like, of course, the event-driven applications again. What I see here is that it shares the same characteristics. It shares the same functionality that we have with Azure Container Apps as well. for scaling, integration with events, sending the message application, all those things. But the Azure function is something where it provides you with the trigger functionality, all right. You get the trigger executions for the events and data binding that you do from the data sources, which is ideally not that we have in the container, right? Container apps, it's like you build the base container image, you make it portable, you host it towards the environment, the container environment that we come up here. Whereas the functionality that Azure function, the working style that Azure function goes is that it's more or less same for a programmatic model on event-driven applications, but it helps you with the triggers, right? The bindings and the triggers that we have. So that's the difference that I see. And we have the next question: how to get hosted app link from the Azure container. You have a fully qualified domain name that you should have seen. So that should be the hosted app link that you have.
Yeah, well, we can see that from the overview blade. If you open up the container apps and click the overview, we get that. And I just want to add one point about the function app and the container apps. At this point of time, we shouldn't compare it because container apps are still emerging. Anyways, event binding and triggers is available in function app too. It is arguably very much a debatable topic. Now, how do we consider function app or container apps? You can't recommend container apps now because it's in public preview. It is not production ready. So obviously, you have an option to do event-driven or serverless automation to be done using function app at this point of time. Once we have fully ready container apps, then we can have the comparison. We can proceed further from there.
Yeah, that's right, Chin. That could be like, I would say that's one of the reason where I don't want to keep it added towards the comparison that we had with function app. You should have seen that I had AKS, ACI, and
Yes.
yes, I missed adding like function app.
Hypothetically, it's a fantastic answer and a good presentation for us. I just want to add one point because I got this question in my public social network as well. So people asking like
Okay.
when I should use ACI or other things. It is in public preview. You can read a lot about it by spinning up your POC, proof of concept, but
Mhm.
it's not production ready yet. So we should also spin up a lot and know what is happening in the back end and other stuff.
I appreciate that. Thanks for adding it, Chin.
Thanks, fellows.
So the next question is like how to get hosted app link. Okay, that has been answered. So Mohammed, you can find it that we have the application URL here. You can go to the portal and there in the overview right of your container app, you can get it. See. And Sid, hi. When should I use container apps and when to use AKS? Apparently, yeah, AKS is going to be like take up the same scenario that we have been discussing, right? The example that we have been discussing. You're thinking about like you need to get a complete control over the cluster management and the K8s API. In those cases, you need to go for AKS, right? You're going to manage the Kubernetes environment completely. And if you want Microsoft to manage all those things and you just need a platform on which you're going to focus on developing your microservice applications, in that case, you can go to the container apps environment. Well, thanks, Chen, again. And how can we debug? Yeah, Chen, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, if consider that you're going to debug any of the container apps ready application, how we are going to containerize your application, that depends on that. Say for an instance, if you're going to build a Node or a Python or any kind of an application, you should be knowing like what extension you use and you use to debug and you test it locally. So VS Code extension is going to be far better for this. Don't go for any third party add-on or other stuff. That should be fully fledged. And once you're going to Dockerize it and you're going to deploy it, because you can't deploy it straight away, right? You have to Dockerize it. So debugging, whatever you use for your local development, you can use the same.
Yeah. We do have like previously we have been working with for the debugging, let's say for example with the Node.js app running in a Docker container, or we have this Docker extension which you can keep it added on the VS Code and you can start debugging, right? So that's like
Yes,
it's right
exactly.
like what Chen says, yeah. Well, yeah, Elias, thank you very much. We have Elias as well, another MVP here. I have been answering. Thank you very much. Will we use container app in microservice architecture? Of course, you can use my container apps in a microservice architecture as well. Yeah. Okay, it's almost like answered, I guess. Well, is there
Yes.
anything else we have left off? Yeah, then go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, one other point I just want to highlight here is like whenever we are deploying the Dapperized or containerized application, whatever you call it as Dockerized or Dapperized, the application is going to be spun in one pod. Your one app endpoint is going to be in one pod. You cannot have a multiple app running on one single pod. That's part of a best practice in K8s as well. Container apps is following that. You cannot have multiple applications running on a single pod. So at this point of time, if you say that I have a Docker compose, I can't do that. No, there is no straight way for that, but there is a tweak for that. We can do that. Probably in next session, December 18, we can demo that together.
Sure, yeah. We have Nalin who has raised his hand. Nalin, go ahead, please.
क्या कर रहा है वो?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I missed your voice. Can you come again, please, Nalin? How the traditional web apps are different there. They are container as well, and one is that they are not using Docker image. No, you can use a Docker image as well, right? Hey, yeah, Yogesh. We have web apps, which we apparently call it as an Azure app service, right? And the point that makes sense comparing container apps with the Azure app service is that Azure app service is again like a fully managed hosting that you get, but it's optimized for the web applications, and it can be integrated with Azure service, like let's say the container apps or with the Azure functions as well. And in case if you're just going to focus on building the web application, right, in that case, your Azure App Service is going to be a right solution for you. You want to call the web APIs, right? You want to come up with a fully managed hosting environment for the web application, then you can use the Azure App Service. Okay, that's how you can use it. Web container apps and container apps, step underneath it. Your process runs in sector architecture. Okay. Well, do we have something else? Yeah. Yes. Hi.
Hi, am I audible now?
Yeah, you're audible. You're audible. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So I joined little bit late, so maybe that question is already answered. So we have like for the microservices, we have a few options in Azure. One is the Azure Fabric Services, which is also the like for the deploying the microservices. We have a AKS, and we also have a Azure function. We can also containerize that. I can see the option that when we are deploying, creating the Azure function, we have, I think, option have to containerize that. So is it like now we need to work on the how when we need to use the AKS things, and which is more backend from the Kubernetes platform, or which is more preferable, or container app? In which scenario we need to use that?
Okay, this we have been discussing already. So coming back to the point, see, Service Fabric, which you have been asking up, is said to be like, I would say it's a SDK that we have. And it also provides you with a platform on which we can develop the microservice applications. But what makes sense here when you speak about Azure Container Service, right, is that you are going to come up with hosting for a selected container with the orchestrator that you need, right? It's going to be like you're going to get a dedicated kind of instance when you use the Azure Container Instance, right? The service called Azure Container Instance. And what makes the difference comparing these things with the Azure Container Apps is that the Container Apps helps you to go with any runtime, the Dapper that we have been speaking about, or the Kida that we have been speaking about. And this is an exclusive platform which helps you with the optimization for just focusing on the development, right? It might be like any event-driven application architecture that you're developing on. You want to go with the pub and sub model or traffic splitting to be done. In all those cases, the container apps is going to help you out. The major point, I mean, the one thing which makes a big difference is that it supports you with a load balancer, traffic filtering, all those parts. And the cluster management, again, coming back to the same point, adding the K8s API, right? Managing the K8s API, the cluster management, all these things are going to be handled by Microsoft when you speak about the container apps. Whereas if you want to drive your own car, right? If you want to drive your Kubernetes environment, then you need to stick towards AKS again. You're getting
Okay,
it?
so
Yeah.
yeah, so basically when we are using AKS, are we able to deploy the same thing into the different cloud provider? Like behind the scenes, it's running in the Kubernetes, right? So if is it like when we are using the AKS on the Azure side, is it possible that we can download the same code and same containers and can transfer this code to the some other cloud provider?
You can containerize it, you can run it. So if I'm not wrong, your question is that you have built a microservice container application, and you're saying that I have it on a container apps, and I just want to pull all those steps. I want to move it towards the AKS environment. Am I right?
Yeah.
You can, yes. AKS is going to be like the only option that gets added up here is that you are going to manage the cluster configuration and the operations, right? You're going to take a control over the Kubernetes environment that you have. So it's like you're going to get like a fully managed version of the Kubernetes. And yes, whatever the code that you have developed, the microservice environment that you have developed for the container apps, yes, we can containerize it. You can host it on towards your AKS too.
Okay. And the same thing, if I needed that, I can transfer the whole AKS thing to some other cloud provider also. Like suppose
You
we
mean
have a
EKS or
microservice.
something?
Yeah, means AWS also. Suppose we have initially developed this containerized app in our Azure environment, but now somehow we need to move into some other cloud provider. So can we downloaded the same thing and the whole when we are managing through the Kubernetes, we have a YAML file where we all have a component networking services. All these component can be written as a YAML file. So can we downloaded this thing and so that it can be transferred to some other cloud provider? Is it possible, right?
I tried once working with the same kind of scenario, moving from a AKS environment towards EKS, which is said to be with AWS. So the same like the one which you're speaking about, the YAML manifest file that we have now. We did the same kind of implementation using the same manifest file moving towards the EKS. So my answer is said to be on AKS towards EKS, which is on AWS. But speaking about container apps, to be frank, I have no experience on trying such a kind of environment. Maybe I would appreciate if Chen can join me on this. Chen, can you any glimpse on this, Chen? Like moving from Azure Container App to EKS?
To EKS, I don't have experience to because I have I'm a novice developer first, and I don't have experience on AWS. But to answer the question about like lift and shifting of AKS to to container apps, if you can explore the Dapper.io document, you will get the building blocks content. In that, you will see what is supported natively. With that, you can build your components. Under the hood, whatever you see, K8s also supports it.
Okay, so this is said to be from container apps to AKS environment, right, Chen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Or otherwise as to, if you're taking from container AKS to container apps.
All right, yeah. But
So
this is something. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. If you see the container app which you spun, you will be seeing a dapper underneath it. If you open up the dapper, or if you open the container app underneath it, you will see the dapper, right? There you can see the components file. So the components file, you can refer to the AKS component file, the API component file.
Okay. So one last question. Now, in the container, we are using some managed service of the Azure. So if we are transferring this all component to some other cloud provider, is it like the managed service will be also imported to that environment, or uh, like as you are mentioning, we are using the storage account, right? The storage account managed services. Now, if we are shifting to some other thing, other cloud provider, is it the same component will be also will integrated with that, or it will hit the Azure environment during that?
No, it's not that. It again depends on how you're going to build your building blocks, right? Your how you're going to re-architect as it. So let's take the
Okay.
same example what we have been speaking now, the container apps with it. The way we have been adding this the secret store towards the storage account. So if you want to remap this, again we go with the buckets on the AKS. It's not that we are going to use the same managed store which is set to be with Azure Research. You go up with AWS, and we need to sit on a re-architecting the part with
Okay.
EKS and connecting with the S3 buckets over there too.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks.
Yeah.